if you're feeling like misunderstood and then you start building a case on Adrian or me or both of us, or like we don't care about you, or like you didn't respect me, or like I'm just imagining what the conversation would be, well, then 5 or 6 days or a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, that came up and you've been building this in your mind. Like, what did he mean by all that? So to me, I always enjoy these conversations. We've had a lot of them. So I just wanted to just encourage that if somebody's thinking, this is how we communicate, this is authentic, this is what happens for us in other organizations. And we've got a firsthand experience of how something very small can be the root of something unnecessary. Like you can take something that's not so bad and make it terrible because you have all this past history that you're gathering evidence on and then finally blowing up about.
So do you want to hear us process one of our breakdowns on the team in real time? Well, stay tuned. That's what this episode is. Hello, my friends. My name is Chad, and this is the Naked Leadership Podcast, high-stakes conversations for relentless company founders. My co-host and I have over 6 decades of combined experience in leadership coaching, and this podcast is where we explore it all. There is no conversation too risky. Speaking of risky, we're going to put a pause on how we typically do these episodes and how I host them. And we're going to try something new. The reason that we're trying something new is because we got some really meaningful feedback from one of our listeners, one of my clients, Adam Wininger. He's president of a company called Luminous. I don't think he'd mind me mentioning him here. He was so gracious. He cared for us so much to actually give us feedback. And the feedback that Adam gave us was this. He said, listen to the podcast. It's really, really great. Get a lot out of it. You guys talk about meaningful principles, but it doesn't feel the same as being in a room with you. And Adam's done The Revenant. He's been a coaching client of mine for about 6 months now, a little over 6 months now. And he's just done a lot of work with us and with me in real time around what they're doing as a company, what he's doing as a leader. So I really appreciated that perspective. And he said, there's what you do in a room is so powerful and so transformative, and it doesn't translate, or very little of that translates to the risk you take on the podcast. And I love that feedback. I've been feeling it for a while. I've been looking for ways to implement more of our work and more of the risks we take with people in conversation and principle into the podcast so that we could, 1, make it more entertaining, and 2, make it more meaningful and impactful. Always looking to figure out how we make this thing even better than it already is. So that's why I was so grateful for Adam's feedback. And then this incident came along on our team where I experienced something with Dan and Adrian that it didn't sit right with me. And there was a lot that I was making up about it. And it was a frustrating interaction around some really meaningful things that we're doing. And I'll lay out the entire story in this episode. But what you're listening to right now is Dan, Adrian, and I actually talking about this for the very first time. Something that really frustrated me, and something that probably didn't really know much about my level of frustration with it. And this is an example. It's real time, it's authentic, and this is actually how we as a team address the things that aren't working for us. And I think it might be interesting for you. I think it might be helpful for you to hear how we relate to each other, how we talk to each other, and how we set forth the commitments and agreements in these types of conversation. So again, this is real time. They didn't know what I was going to talk about, and this is us taking a risk. I hope it's helpful. Frankly, I hope you enjoy it. Let us know. Here we go. All right, gentlemen, how are you?
Doing
Excellent.
great. Good to be here.
Looking forward to it.
It's
been a while.
It has been a while. I wanted to acknowledge, Dan, so good to have you. I mean, you and I did a couple episodes too in the last couple of weeks, but Adrian wasn't on them. So this is finally us back together.
Yeah. I wonder how many people are going, oh shit, they're back together.
Oh, shit.
It's so much fun without them.
It's funny.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll get some feedback about it. Hey, maybe somebody wants me to take a break for a while.
God help us. God help us.
I mean,
I don't know how to do any of this stuff.
Just because you get the feedback doesn't mean you have to do anything about it.
That's true. That's true. Well, hey, we this episode is going to be a little bit different. We may not even publish it. We'll see how it turns out, but a little bit different based on really some feedback that we were given so graciously by one of our clients that listens to all of the episodes, and it was really great. He invited us to get a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more connected in the recording of the podcast, take risks. One of his comments was to me was, he's been to the Revenant and he's familiar with what that experience is like and what it calls you into, what the types of conversations it calls you into. And he was just wondering, which I so appreciated, was like, hey, how is there a way that you could bring some of that meaningful? I mean, we've covered great topics and I love having conversations around principles with you guys. He was just wondering, how could you make the podcast consistent with what someone experiences when they are in a room with you guys? And that was a really interesting piece of
It's a
feedback.
it's a good target, I like I said, we talked a little bit afterwards, and part of it I think is we end up recounting our conversations, and by that time we've worked things out and
That's right.
mind and so we've and I think the idea is what you've done today is, hey, let's save something and work it live, and
Yeah.
people can see how we work together and just what kind of assholes we really are.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
That's exactly. We can show you what assholes we really are. Yeah. So this
Sure.
this conversation, I wanted to bring something real and present for me, and this is all made possible because I've been a withholding little bitch. No, I'm just kidding.
What's new? Is there anything new? I thought there's something new.
No, that's not necessarily true. I mean, part of it is that I blame it on function of time, but really been wanting to get clear with you guys on a conversation we were having a couple weeks ago. And I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to at least just test it out. People might listen to this and be like, we don't want to hear about your shit. Go back to the other format. I have a couple of aims in this conversation for me. The aim for me is to express what I experienced in a way that is clear and well thought through so that we can get some learnings from it, possibly. That's aim number one for me. Aim number two is to establish some new commitments and ways of relating to these types of conversations, because we're going to have lots and lots of them, and that we've had lots of them in the past, and we'll have lots of them in the future. And so I want to establish, we don't know what we don't know. So each one of these times that we engage is an opportunity to learn where we miss it, how we relate to each other, what we weren't willing to see, what we don't see. So those are my two aims. And then also I also just want to state the obvious at the top of the conversation, is that I love both of you so much, and our relationship is so meaningful for me. That's why I find this conversation important. And so
Are you saying this has been an intervention in your intimacy with us? Like you feel like disconnected or isolated because you haven't talked about it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And not ever present. I mean, Adrian and
No,
I
I
had
get it. I just want to make sure I connected what you
yeah, I get that. Like even Adrian and I had a couple of production days last week together, and there wasn't any there. It's not like I was thinking about this the whole time.
Oh, you're lying, you little bitch.
I
You're
know.
lying.
I know. So the lying begins. So I thought maybe we would just start. I'll talk about what I experienced for two functions. You could see my perspective and to bring people up to speed of what we're talking about. Does that seem like the best place to start, or is there any other things that you guys want to establish?
Yeah, that's great.
That's great.
Okay, great. Perfect. So what happened, we've been working, and this is another really beautiful opportunity for us to talk about the negotiation quiz that is launched in the episode description, actually, of this episode. You can follow the link to a negotiation quiz where you'll be asked 15 questions, and you can understand your style of negotiating, and where your strengths are and where your blind spots might exist. And in fact, the episodes after this episode are going to be a series of us talking about those 5 styles, those 5 attitudes in negotiation. So very, very topical, very, very exciting. This just so happens to be like the big announcement. Anyway, something we've been working on for a while, and this is a quiz that Dan, you've had and been using long before I was even an idea in this work. So we're working on that. I was building out both the quiz functionality. How do we deliver it to people in a way that they could take the quiz, get results? It's a meaningful process and smooth. And the landing page, meaning the web page where people would land once they find out about it on the podcast or social media or whatever, and people land there and then they can take the quiz from there. So I'd been working on that in the background, got it all to the place where I thought it was really effective, ready to go, put it out to the group, to our team on Slack, and just said, hey, here is the landing page. If you have any feedback, please let me know. And, and then I think I put my stamp of approval on this, looking for any other ways that we can improve this before we launch February 1st or February. So put that out. Not a couple of thumbs up, couple of little things like, hey, I didn't, this link didn't work, that sort of thing from different people on the team. Not a lot to speak of. So I assumed that we were good to go, that we were rolling. And this was also in the midst, just the reality that you were facing, Dan, that we were all facing, but you in the depths of it, being closely connected with your family and choosing when you connected to the work stuff, and totally, completely understandable. From my experience, I actually am unclear what happened, but it surfaced for you two about a week later, maybe about a week and a half later. And it was a Saturday. And so we were on a text chain about it. And I was at Milo's basketball game when Adrian, when you joined the conversation and said, hey, where do I find this? How do I work on it? All of that sort of stuff. And you had mentioned at that moment that you had a deadline, like you had a small window of time to work on it because you were going to be with the family at a certain time that day. And I answered and said, hey, I'm at a basketball game right now. Could help you out in an hour or so. I can't remember the exact time frame. What I experienced was, and this is where I struggled. What I experienced was, how I interpreted it was, you have a deadline to be with your family, which I totally will respect and want you to have that time. It felt to me like the conversation continued after, or like the requests or the urgency continued after I had let you know I was currently in the middle of a family obligation. And I've got like this people pleasing thing where I want to take care of people and be the guy. And, I'm well acquainted with how I can like prostitute myself in that way. Anyway, so I think that it wasn't like the missed feedback deadlines or anything like that, or it resurfacing, or even the feedback, like, wanted it. It was that I felt there was an arbitrary sense of urgency in that moment for the request, and that I needed or was what I made up, not what you said, what I made up, needed you to get you that information in that moment because you had obligation later. So
there's a question in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is a question that I think, and I've been thinking about that. The question is what is the question?
Can I tell you what I hear?
Oh, please. Yes. I've talked way too much.
Well, I'm hoping that you can be, because I know how direct you can be, and I like it when you are. But sometimes you have to get mad before you get that direct, and you just be that direct now.
You've never seen me mad, Dan.
Only a little bit, just edgy. But what I heard was, it sounded like, or you felt like there was an urgency on you from one of us or both of us that it ought to be done now, and that your time with your family wasn't being respected, or you felt taken advantage of, and I don't know if it's even that strong, but
No, not taken advantage of.
or not considered or held at the same standard, something like
Yes. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Is that what? And like the question I hear is was that going on for you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. That is the question, is like, or, I mean, if I'm really talking like Adrian, what was like, the question for me is like, what was going on for you when you continued the conversation after I told you what I was up to?
So if I remember the situation, a couple things come up for me. One was you reaching out, and I forget, there was a couple factors around this needed to get done soon because of something. I think it was,
Because we were
a
going to launch
client.
it, or you wanted to get it launched by the first or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a little bit what was going on for me was, oh shit, I missed something here. So a little bit of guilt. And then it was a unique morning for me where it was me alone with the kids. I had a scenario in which I had a little bit of a window to get some stuff done. And so, how can I make up for it in a short amount of time? And my window was kind of closing until and then knowing what was going to be coming up for me later in the day, where I wouldn't be able to kind of come back in and give the requested feedback. What else was going on for me? So I felt a little, I felt crunched, I would say, from like me ability to come in and give the feedback that was being asked for, that I've been late to. And what else was happening for me? Yeah, I think when you said that you're at Milo's game, I mean, maybe there was some probably lack of. I would get how it show up as lack of some consideration, a little bit of maybe understating on my side, because all I needed was a link in my mind. If you could take 15 seconds and send me something, then I can go. But I get how that might have been like, I don't know how clear it was. I think you did say I can get it to you in a certain amount of time. So I could have backed off at that stage. I didn't know probably at the time like how quick or how long it would take. But I think probably theoretically, or like big picture wise, the understated theme on your side is no, not right now. I'll get it to you when I'm available.
Yeah. And
Um,
what wasn't clear was that it was a bigger answer than that. Unfortunately, like, there wasn't a simple link to send.
got it. Got it. Oh, and I remember, I think, and there's some technological. I think some of the follow up comments from me, because you had sent a link that I couldn't get access to because it was on Evernote or something.
Yeah.
Is that
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what else is going on for me probably also is like just frustration. I can't actually get access to the thing that I need to and want to get access to. So now I want to help. Now I feel the need to help, and then I want to help, and now I can't help, and I need you, and you're not available, and that sucks for everybody. So that's probably the answer to what was going on for me. It was like, shit. Now we got even more shit here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I know there were a number of things that I was making up. There's also a number of
What were
things.
you making up? What did you make up?
What I made up is, I made up like, oh, Adrian doesn't see that I'm committed to my family like he's committed to his family, or that there wasn't which is like, I know I made that up because at every turn, both of you will champion my commitment to my family.
But it
Sure.
felt that way. When I
Yeah,
get
it
it.
felt that way in the moment, right? So it's like, all right, I got it.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and to add to that, I mean, maybe I thought you're exactly as committed to your family the way I am, and so far that I assumed, if I'm out at a function, I'm not going to sit there and edit a document, but I can. Just did it this morning on a walk with with Allie and the dog. something was happening. I needed to do some logistics. I said, hey, just give me just a second. And I'm pausing our little time just to do something. And then I'm back in the action. So I think in that moment, I assumed it wouldn't take too long to get the link thing figured out. Obviously, there was a bigger conversation for you that you wanted to have. So my assumption is that you've got moments like that with your family. I know I do. That I'm like at a family thing and I take a little 30-second time out and take care of something, and then I'm back in the game.
Yeah. I usually pretend I'm taking a shit.
Let me go to the bathroom here
I
real
do
quick.
the same thing. Oh, and I need my phone because, somebody might call.
Oh, I always take my phone to the shitter. You don't, Dan?
Slowly pull the phone off the table.
Oh, my daughter calls me out every time. Oh, gonna do some business in the bathroom, Pop? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
So yeah, I get that, Adrian. And also you've really helped me in that area of my life, that clear communication with family of like, hey, look, here's what I'm up to, guys. I'm going to take a second to do this because I care about this as well. I had like at the basketball game is a different scenario for me. I know if Milo in a split second, he gets the ball, he takes a shot, he's going to look back at me to see what I'm up to.
Right on. Right on.
And if my dad, if I'm on my, if my head's buried in my phone, that could happen in a second, and that I've missed that opportunity. So that's what was going through my head in that particular moment. And also knowing that the answer that I needed to give you was more complex than what you thought the answer could be or should be. So that's what that's what I was making up in it. And I get that. I also am very clear on what I own in the breakdown. Anything else that was current for you, Adrian, in that before we do that?
I think I felt, I think I've a little bit, I think this partially came out in a little bit of the debrief we did afterwards, just the brief kind of feedback to it. Because I felt like you had sent it earlier, maybe up to 10 days or however long you're saying. And then there was a deadline happening and we needed to get it out that night. And so I'll recap. So, you'd send out the information week, 7 days before, asking for general feedback from the general team in a Slack, which I hadn't caught nor involved myself in. And then on the 11th hour, it was a direct ask to me. And on a Saturday, all of a sudden we need to get it out right away. So I think what was also going on for me was I felt some pressure in the moment because you had, stated the desire for feedback 7-10 days before in a generalized way to the team, naturally asking for feedback, which I had missed and hadn't been involved with at all. And I know that you want me to be involved for my conversation, in the brand, how we're going to do this. I have a point of view that's honored here as well. And then all of a sudden it felt to me like it was at the 11th hour on a Saturday. And I wanted to do it, and I knew I had a very small natural time. There can always be a request later, and a request later there's more challenge to it. But I knew this window, so I kind of felt this pressure. Now I'm at the 11th hour when the request got really direct, which is due because I hadn't been involved earlier. But that's what also was. So I don't know if I was that. Yeah.
And here's where I'm noticing what I can own in this. It's interesting that you saw we were in the 11th hour of something because there was no deadline that we were up against. And I had stated that on Saturday. So the conversation started Friday evening where Dan just popped in and said, hey, check out the new copy I wrote. Give me feedback.
And I completely misunderstood what you wanted.
Yeah.
So a little senior moment there. Created a whole bunch of copy that we can use somewhere else.
Yeah. But there's so much that I'm owning in that too, in that little part of the breakdown.
It showed up for me too about what I could own. Like I sat there and go, why didn't I just ask him specifically what he was looking for instead of assuming I assumed it was the sales page for the end lab, negotiation lab. And so I went about creating this copy won't work for the negotiation lab. It's too narrow and there needs to be some punch on it. And so I went about punching it up and broadening it, and then you told me, I could have just asked. Why didn't I? Don't know. I just was on automatic. Honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
Here's a new bumper sticker for us. Don't be an ass. Just ask. Yeah.
That's right. Take one S off and put a K on there.
That's right.
So Adrian, it's interesting to me to even hear you talk about the lack of clarity of the deadline and what was being asked or what was expected or what even was needed. Because at that moment, I mean, this was January 20th. We were talking about a February 1 launch. There was just nothing. And that was, I guess, it's so clear to me now because I'm sitting here thinking, what's up with this guy? Why is he attacking this now? Like, what? And you're thinking, oh shit, let me take care of this so that, like, let me show up in a way that, like, now you go into strategic mode. It makes sense to me.
It was a Three Stooges movie as well.
Well, wasn't there something around the name Tori?
I'm Curly, Adrian's Mo, and you're Chef.
Wasn't there something about Tori, or we need to get something to her, or something like that? Maybe I think that's what I was making up.
There was some urgency around getting Tori an outline to the lab.
Negotiation lab. Yeah.
In-house, and I sent him the outline of the day for that. But that there was some urgency around that, so you might have picked that up.
Yeah.
Well.
Names redacted to protect identities. No, I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tori.
Tori's about to get fired. Anyway, whatever.
So here's the deal. All of this is like part of it's of a confession of like what I was experiencing was there wasn't grounds for me to make up what I made up, in my opinion, based on our history, based on the way that we stand for each other. And go ahead.
Though, so just a caveat before you go further. Some people might think this is nitpicky, but this is the kind of no, not you.
No, I know. I'm giggling because I'm putting on my ears of somebody listening. Go, what the fuck are they even talking about?
Yeah, they don't get because this stuff is if you catch this is the hors d'oeuvre. I'll take the hors d'oeuvre over the shit buffet any day, because if you're feeling like, if you like misunderstood and then you start building a case on Adrian or me or both of us, or like we don't care about you, or we don't, and like you didn't respect me, or like I'm just imagining what the conversation would be. Well, then 5 or 6 days or a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, you don't understand why you're so detached or angry or resentful about some small thing that came up, and you've been building this in your mind. Like, what did he mean by all that? So to me, I always enjoy these conversations. We've had a lot of them. And so I just wanted to just encourage that. If somebody's thinking that this is how we communicate, this is authentic. This is what happens for us because we've all blown things up here in other organizations. And we've got a firsthand experience of how something very small can be the root of something unnecessarily. Like, you can take something that's not so bad and make it terrible because you have all this past history that you're gathering evidence on and then finally blowing up about.
Life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Let me say that one more time. Life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Now, that's an interesting thought. If that's true, it means that everything you have in life right now, the possessions, the relationships, the fitness, the mindset, are all a product of your negotiations with others and yourself. And if that's true, wouldn't you want to be very clear on how you negotiate? What's effective and what's ineffective? What your strengths are and what your blind spots are? It is, after all, producing all the results in your life. So here's the deal. We put together a 15-question quiz that you can take in 5 minutes or less and find out exactly what your negotiation style is. The results of this quiz will give you insight into your strengths and blind spots in negotiation. It will also give you insight in how you can accentuate those strengths or compensate for the blind spots. Think for just 1 second with me all of the conversations you're having in your life. Think about compensation or advancement conversations with people on your team, discussing financial decisions with a partner, or just getting your kids to get their damn shoes on so that you can leave the house. All of these conversations are negotiations. This simple yet powerful tool has the potential to reinvent the way you get what you want in every aspect of life. Go to negotiation.takenewground.com right now, or click the link in the description of this episode and find out what negotiation style you embody. You can thank us later. Now back to the show. Yeah. And my life with you guys, my relationship to you guys is worth the nitpickiness. It is worth the conversation and where we're going, and my commitment to you and this thing and myself is like it's a no-brainer to just keep this shit clean, right?
Well,
As early as possible.
you know the proverb, right? It goes, "Faithful in the little, rulers of much." So no, that's why I get it. We've talked about these things. It was bothering me that I misinterpreted, even though I thought the copy we got out of it
It
was
was great. Nothing
love it.
lost. No,
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
lost.
but you were generous in saying that, but I felt I felt bad because I felt like I really didn't pay attention to you in that. So I was like, fuck, I just there you go, Dan.
So that brings me to my contributions. A couple of contributions that I have identified to the breakdown that I want to own is one, lack of clarity. I just think the approach in the request for feedback, there wasn't clarity around even planning for our process of feedback. Like, hey, Dan, Adrian, does it work for you guys if I request feedback on Slack? Like, does that work for you? Do you see it? Do you want, like, is that how you want to receive it? Do you want to receive it some else? You can make a request, or we can negotiate that or whatever. I didn't do that. That's like project management number one, foundationally. Second is I assumed a lot. Like, I assumed the probably the biggest thing that I assumed in all of this was that if you didn't respond to it on Slack, that you were giving a thumbs up, go ahead, do what you need to do. Assuming that you didn't need to have your hands on everything or but this is a big deal. It's a big launch for us, and I want your guys' eyes. So even the idea that I didn't, after a couple of days of no response, didn't reach out to you individually and say, hey, posted this, we're ready to roll, still really want your input on it. When could you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I don't know how much of that as much as I can own. I wasn't paying attention to Slack, which I can't often do, and so that was a contribution there. And I had just reloaded Slack on my phone so I wouldn't miss messages because I've been missing them. So there you go.
Well,
So
and I know for me,
it was
part of
clear.
I think environmentally, like part of the tension that I'm in is like deciding what to do, deciding what to be involved in as we keep expanding as a team and have phenomenal team that's growing and highly capable, really brilliant teammates. Like, what do I need? What do I need to get? What do I need to be involved in, and what do I not need to be involved in? It's like, and I think I find myself picking a poll, like let them all do it and don't even pay attention at all, or I'm going to do it. Back off. Let me do it. It's like
Extremes, passive
yeah,
aggressive.
yeah. Well, fuck you, Dan.
Thank you. Any daily.
Thank you. I received that.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Thank you, sir. Could I have
I'll,
another?
yeah, or like my essential. I wouldn't say it so harshly, but my essentialness, or I don't need to be involved at all. It's like essentially. I think that's more of the polls. I don't think it actually hits me that aggressively, but it's like, is this something that's key for me, or is it cool if I don't touch it at all? And I think the moment in time we're in as an organization, I'm in that kind of new tension about where to focus my time. And when something like that, I mean, an unspoken request, I think an assumption that I make is that, if someone's emailed me about something or Slacked or something about, communicated, if it's really important, they'll mention it to me when they see me as well. Which might be like an entitled view, right?
That's
She's like,
so interesting, man.
yeah, isn't that interesting?
The prince.
That is very interesting. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
You raise a good point, Adrian. I think it's revealing something we probably all need to have a revisit, which is how do we each are going to focus our time? What are going to be our primary, secondary, maybe tertiary concerns? Because things have been growing so rapidly, and it's pretty crazy. And so this might be something that we should take some time aside and just say, okay, hey, who are we? And now, given where we are as a company, what does there need to be a redistribution of responsibilities and authority that may be more decentralized so we can and trust that and then develop some kind of understanding about how we'll check in with each other on those in those areas of responsibility might be a good conversation because we are spread pretty thin and we need to get our minds around, maybe slow down so we can go faster, get clear about how we can divide some of this up even more specifically. When you said that, it triggered a lot of things. Like I know we had a conversation the other day, you and me, Chad, about how we can support Caitlin, and like this might be like we have more talent on the team that may be able to step in and take some of this stuff off of our plates and well worth incentivizing it
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, Adrian. Just so I can know, I can have a window of like, it's so different than my way of thinking. And I assume everybody thinks the way that I think in relationship to those communication platforms. So I'm just, yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. I don't think I've like really questioned that thought either, like on like the impact of that viewpoint on my side as well, because I get the kind of the, I think you guys laughed because it probably comes off a little diva-ish maybe, or the prince you called me. Thank you very much.
well, you are the royalty. I respect that. You should own it. Humility is to own it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also that's my unseen bias because I tend to do that. I think if I've emailed, I'm thinking about. I think it's more clear in our communication pattern, Dan. Like, and you and I rarely ever text each other, or we text each other more than we email each other. But if there's something that I'm responsible for and I want your feedback on, I think that if I've emailed you about it, next time we talk, I'm going to ask you, hey, did you check that out yet? Oh, and so it's like the email kind of goes away, like it never even happened. The email is almost like a bookmark to a conversation that I'm going to have with you.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like probably a blind assumption on my side that you would have, or that if you do want me to give my 2 cents, you'd make sure that you have it if I've seen the Slack message or not.
Yeah, which I've noticed, and that's what I'm owning is like I'm totally in for like following up with that shit. Like for me, that's like when I hear you say that, I'm like, but that's having the conversation twice. Do we have to have the conversation twice? But that's not how you see it. That's like it's like a mark of like, hey, let's have this conversation. So interesting.
Yeah, but it could be, I mean, I've got plenty of kind of special caseness in me as well. It's like, oh, you send it out to the whole team. Let's let the whole team do the thing, and then if you want me to do it, like talk whenever we talk to me about it.
You want me to grovel?
Yeah, I'm really
Adrian.
important, Chad. I'm very important.
That's beside the point.
It's beside the point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some on my end. There's some new commitments, and then there's a couple of requests. For me, the new commitments are to be a lot more clear and consistent in where and how I ask for feedback on things. Be clear and consistent.
Be clear and consistent.
More, Dan. Damn it. More. I'm not gonna commit to it, but I'm gonna do more of it. I'm gonna roll on up.
Roll up to it. Roll on up to that thing.
Yeah. Thank you
too.
for that clarifying point. And you can narrate that a little bit, Dan, but that is a really good, maybe even a place to just like give some insight. Why did you interrupt the more?
Well, it's like and it could be an excuse. Doesn't mean that it is. It's a way of setting yourself up like, well, I did a little more and it didn't work, or versus, hey, I'm committed to being clear and consistent in my requests. so that when I'm not, I can recognize it. So if more gives me some wiggle room, at least me, I'm not, and that, I don't think that that's always the case, but it opens up some wiggle room. Like, well, I did more and you didn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing more, and it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you're clear and consistent and it misses, and it's a lot easier to see what the miss was and easier for me to take responsibility for my contribution. And it eliminates that. I was thinking about your negotiation style.
Yeah.
And one of the weaknesses in the style is that you think you deserve the um, what your interests are, right? And so if they're not met, then it's offensive because so that's what little more might serve that whole point of view. Because now I've done it more, and you ought to be doing this, and you didn't, right? And so then you can feel it's that entitlement that comes with in the negotiation. I don't know that that's true for you.
Yeah.
By the
So
way.
actually, what I want to change my commitment then with that coaching, and I appreciate it. My commitment is to know for sure if you guys want to give feedback on something and when you can get it to me by. Now, I'll do that by being consistent and clear about my ask. But the commitment, I'm driven by the commitment that I might not know what it will require of me yet. Right. So I'm willing to do that.
My request back to you is, if it's urgent, would you text me? If it's not so urgent, because I could miss the Slack, and I tend to turn my phone off, and if I turn it on, I always see I always tend to see the text first. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm thinking of any kind of requests I've got for it. Yeah, I appreciate that. And a text would be great. I can also, a direct message, any kind of direct message works for me. Even if it's on Slack, I get notifications on my phone. And I'm okay for the most part. I could do like a pretty quick turnaround for the most part.
Yeah.
If I could have 2 or 3 days in advance, that's even more helpful, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. I think it's great. I don't think there's anything else left there for me.
Yeah.
I do wonder, I guess here's a wondering with you.
Yes.
When it comes to things like that, which like you've done first draft, you want feedback, where in the sequence of feedback is my voice most impactful? Would you like me to give my view? Is it better for the project if I give my view right after you've given your view, or to hear the rest of the team and then I give kind of final feedback? Does that matter to you?
That does, actually. That's a really good wondering. For me, I would like your guys' eyes and feedback as final.
Yep, I figured.
So that's how I feel too. Yeah.
So it makes sense to me, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is to request feedback from the team before I bring you guys in.
That's great.
It's clear.
Yeah.
Now that I'm trying to justify myself, that's what I was doing earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very good at it. I think we should do a training on that. We could call it the dark training. How to polarize a room or a relationship.
I'm really good at that. I don't know. The vein in my head just popped out, so I'm feeling convicted.
C.S. Lewis said, anything that has power to bring life has equal and opposite power to bring death. And if it doesn't, it's not really going to bring life. It's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah. You both have been very gracious in this conversation. Thank you. Love and appreciate both of you so much. And I think but it's not lost on me what you guys, what's on your plates at any given moment. I don't take that for granted. And I'm committed to working inside of what you're available for at the time and what you're not. I'm going to go, right? And so staying connected to you on what's possible, what's not possible in that moment is going to be crucial for that.
Yeah. Well, and I shared this in a whole different context I'm talking about some other things as well with you when you were hanging out at the house and we were doing some YouTube shoot days. I think the kind of the heartbreak in this breakdown for me is I don't want to let Chad down. Chad is a fucking force of nature, especially in the last few months as you've come back and now you're like leading with a whole new level of intentionality and generating and then managing really important projects, potential, with high level of impact, high level of revenue goals, all this. And like, when I'm not a resource for that, it matters to me. And well, and even that, it's not as much that, it's a who. When I'm not that much of a resource to you, so I've got your back, and I always want you to feel like I'm right there by your side, hand on the back, go, 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 go. And so in these moments when I miss it, that's really that's connected to the long-term legacy of your impact here and our relationship moving forward. So like, this is why this is like, it is really convicting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
And I just want you to be a good tool and shut up and do your job.
Yeah.
No,
I
man,
just was hoping that at least one of you would say, you don't understand how busy I am.
no, man. When I saw that, I thought, oh, I got to get on this, and it was a good time for me because I had, all that was going on. This was like, oh, good, something I can, that's got some constancy to it, and it's not all over the place. Like that 2 weeks was horrible. So I really wanted to get it done, and I really thought I did a great job, even though I did a different job than what I was asked to do. So thanks for humoring me in that senior moment.
I love you both. I hope this is valuable for people. I like this. I think this is really fun. So anyway, love you both.
More to come, right?
That's right.
More to come.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Naked Leadership Podcast. As a heads up, every Friday we post a Cliff Notes version of that week's conversation with all the highlights in under 5 minutes. Check that out for a quick and powerful reminder of the principles discussed. I hope this conversation has been valuable to you. If it has, the greatest compliment you could pay us is sharing it with somebody who could use it. Thanks so much for listening, and until next week, bye-bye, everybody.